Yeah, we do. Right now, he's got to kind of, I don't want to say restart, but pick up where he left off with the throwing progression. Anytime you get looked at by the doctors, there's usually a little bit of a grace period in there where there's inactivity. So once he picks activity back up, he'll kind of see where he's at with the trainer and the doctor, and then kind of create a new throwing progression from there. And with all these guys we've had since we've been here, the doctors need to clear them, and then my personal belief, or just the way I want to do it, is they're going to have to hit certain marks or certain steps along the way before we're going to use them against an opponent. So there'll be no rush, but obviously his teammates and more than anyone, Blade himself would like to get out there as soon as possible. But I think for right now, patience will be key.
And in the meantime, who's in competition for that third starting role?
You know, I think Camden Sewell solidified himself as kind of a Swiss Army knife for us that we can use in a lot of different ways due to his experience. Chase Burns is kind of this year's version of Blade Tidwell in that he has advanced stuff, but also kind of an advanced mentality and work ethic, in my opinion. Chase Dolander's a guy who could do a lot of different things for us as well because he's got good stuff and throws strikes. So he's an option. Also, Drew Beam is a freshman, and Hollis Fanning is a redshirt freshman, two guys that don't have quite as much experience as a guy like Sewell, but the one thing they do that we like a lot when they get out there is throw strikes. And then too, with the beginning of the season and not having a lot of guys, even the ideal starter built up for a pitch count to go 7 or 8 innings for you, you might be kind of looking to just splice up games any way you can. I'm not a great analytical guy or use the word opener a lot, but a guy who maybe starting the game, we might be looking for 9 outs more than we're looking for 9 innings, especially at the beginning of the year.
Ryan and then Mike, what stood out about Ethan Smith and what's his eligibility status?
Yeah, Ethan is thrown well in scrimmages. He's only had a few opportunities, so it's nice to see a guy that is kind of on his own, like really all of our players are over the winter break, and come in prepared and throwing the ball well. He obviously transferred in mid-year, extenuating circumstances, and I think the NCAA is gracious to work with us on and any other kid who has circumstances like that are kind of unique, but ultimately got to go through the paperwork and have to get the go-ahead. So I would assume, before we're too deep into the year or even before the start of the season, we would know what the exact situation is. But until then, it's kind of like the weather. It's out of our control. So we'll sit back and wait and see what happens.
Mike?
Do you see any separation, I guess, through the end of fall into the spring in the middle infield with guys?
At times, it's our game is a game of repetitions. So I guess like a basketball game, you might see a game of runs. You're watching for 2 minutes and you think one team's dominating, and you click the channel and the other team's winning now. So there's been guys who have I think found a comfort level. Logan Steenstra, Christian Moore, Cortland Lawson, Seth Stevenson, those guys have played very well in the middle of the field, but also Trey Lipscomb has the ability to play shortstop, I think as good as well as anyone that we've had here. But he's also a dynamic third baseman. So it's kind of end up going to be what's the best combination, and it's also going to be a deal where guys are going to have to understand that there might be a day they come to the yard and their name's not in the lineup, but they need to be ready to go because we might put them in a situation that we think is kind of favors them or sets them up for success. But on any given day, they might not be starting because we want to give other guys chances. So non-conference, in my opinion, is always going to be a time we need to experiment a little bit and do whatever we got to do to have as many questions answered as possible going into SEC play.
Back right.
Tony, what have you seen from Evan at catcher since the fall? How's he progressed there? Is that still something you sit on?
I think there's what hasn't changed, which is nice, is kind of the humble approach. I mean, self-belief is such a key ingredient for any athlete. And while Evan is skilled and he's improved his skills all around through work ethic, he's not Bryce Harper. And he wouldn't be the player he is without self-belief and almost kind of I wouldn't say arrogance, but a great deal of confidence. But he's approached that position with humility, despite his experience and that confidence. And that hasn't changed. He's consistently asking questions, trying to improve in little areas. So overall, I haven't seen one thing like throwing or blocking has made a huge jump. It's just kind of that inch by inch daily improvement, and that attitude has not changed of how do I learn more, how do I get better rapport with the pitchers, whatever it might be. And then at the same time, I'll tell you this too, he's been pushed by Charlie Taylor. Very, very evident when guys do their work over Christmas break. Like I said, they're kind of on their own, and that's a guy who did his work over the break, and he's someone who's going to get a lot of action as well. So like all of our guys, other than about 3 of them, you're going to have to work every day to solidify that you're a weekend starter, or you're the guy out of the pen late in the game, or you're a guy starting at a particular position.
Karthik?
Hey Coach, just a couple weeks away from the season, what are the big things you want to accomplish, as the season opener approaches?
I want to see the sun more. We've gotten, I think the rest of the country, we've kind of gotten erratic weather, but we've made do. We've got facilities here that really allow us to adjust on the fly. So that's been good. So really for now, I think what we want to do is continue to increase pitch count for the pitchers, and kind of start to back off a little bit. We've pushed the guys pretty hard, whether it be in training with us or in the weight room, and kind of start to filter down for that game and check all the boxes that you would talk about with signs and knowing where to go on certain defensive situations. So I don't feel like we got to cram for a test at this point. We kind of had that mentality when they first got back. I think for now it's kind of reviewing our notes, or even kind of making up a study guide if you're a good student. I only did that about 20% of the time, but when you do, it's effective. And so we'll kind of come up with a study guide and check those boxes before game 1 so we feel we're prepared.
And then back to Ryan.
Just with Ethan, do you envision him as a starter or a guy coming out of the pen, and just kind of what about his game did you like in pursuing him?
Hopefully I don't look like a bad coach, but I don't know him well enough, So the one thing he definitely has is quality off-speed pitches. So you can look at that 2 ways. You could really use that as a guy out of the pen. You're probably coming in to get us out of a jam. And when you can go to quality off-speed, it really, really helps. So, and he's also got experience of, I believe, closing some games and coming out of the pen in crucial situations. And he knows what the league looks like. I think it helps to have that vision. It's not a must to have success, but I think it helps. Now, having said that, as he continues to kind of get into our system a little bit more, and get around our people where we can get him in condition shape and things like that to potentially start, I wouldn't rule that out as an option either. And again, for us early in the year, the definition of starter might be different, for us than what it was for Greg Maddox.
Guys in your program have really taken big steps from their first to second year. Just Kyle Booker, what's his offseason been like, and what's his role kind of going into this season?
Kyle came back with a very unique attitude, or I shouldn't say unique, but a different attitude than almost all the other guys. Just really eager to learn and upbeat, and it was something that was talked about among the coaches a lot. As we get closer to the season, you can see he's one of a few guys kind of trying to press and do a little bit too much. And in any sport, that's kind of the biggest don't do it, or thing that can shoot yourself in the foot. And we need to get him to calm down and just be who he is. But one thing that does that probably better than the coaching staff can is just game situations. He feels like he's a guy when the lights come on, he's at his best. His teammates do. The stats and video kind of back that up. But at the same time, we got to go off what we see in batting practice and in scrimmages and things like that to put guys in certain situations that they've earned or we feel they deserve. So that's a lot of random thoughts on him. But bottom line is he's going to get a chance. He hasn't played his best as of late, but he's a guy that's incredibly talented, has made a lot of mature jumps in his game mentally and physically since year 1.
Mike?
With Drew and Jordan back, you returned 2 of 3 starters right there in the outfield. Have they done anything that's changed them this offseason, or any particular ways that they've improved and rounded out their skills?
Yeah, Jordan came back from Christmas break, and again, you're always kind of, what's going to happen? Are they going to completely change their swing or do something different? And Jordan came back and was swinging the bat the best I've ever seen him in January in batting practice. So the key for Jordan is, who's so passionate about just hitting in general, and then also his game, is to not experiment or think too much and recognize this is going pretty well for me. Now the challenge is, can I do it day in and day out like a big leaguer is required to do? which he will be one of these days, I'm confident in. And then with Drew, the thing that sticks out for him is he plays so dang hard. We've told him to back off at times. Who knows if he'll be called on to pitch. He's become an incredible center fielder. I know a lot of people, compare him to Cole Calhoun, who played at Arizona State and is in the big leagues, just the way he swings, the way he plays. But on the field, and I'll stress on the field, Lenny Dykstra is kind of the guy Frank and I have talked about as of late. Just in center field, he seems to have a beat on every ball, and he almost is running into that wall too many times. So, again, I think Drew's a great kid off the field. I wouldn't compare, and he's got all of his teeth, so I wouldn't compare him too much to Nails. But I think, similar stuff going on in the box and out there in center field.
How have you seen the back end of your bullpen shake out this fall? What do you expect from guys like Redman and Kirby coming?
Yeah, it's an easy way out or a bad answer, however you want to see it. But it's all going to be dependent on what's going on in those first 3, 4, 5 innings. Redman is as experienced as anybody in the league, and he kind of gives you a calming influence when he comes in the game. And it's kind of a deal where you're in that situation. Law percentages say at some point it may not go your way. And it's not fun to be that guy that's the last one to have the ball in your hand and the game doesn't go your way. I'm all for Redman or someone else proving me wrong. But the good thing about Redman is if it goes good or it goes bad, you feel good that he's the guy you had out there. He's someone like Chad Dallas was for us last year. The guys love playing behind him, and they love when he's out there. Ben Joyce is really, it's going to be fun. It's for a guy who throws as hard as he is and as big as he is, people need to realize he's so advanced stuff and physical-wise, but he's at the opposite end of the spectrum. And no disrespect, man, he just hasn't thrown a lot. You name it, COVID, late bloomer, Tommy John surgery before he got here. So, it just hasn't been a deal where he's pitched a lot, and he's kind of finding his way through the forest, so to speak. And it could be any kind of role for him out of that deal. Will Mabry has been a fun one to have in our program. He's an in-state kid. Sometimes those guys love the Vols so much they get here and it almost kind of hurts them a little bit. I think he's gotten out of that shell and truly loves this place, but now he understands what he's got to do to be the best version of him. And, we've got a bunch of lefties that, are down there available, and some of them are going to get pinched out of innings and some of them are going to kind of rise to the top. But I think as of right now, he's kind of out front in that group, if you kind of call Redman our closer.
The two more, finish with Ryan and Mike. You mentioned Drew maybe pitching. How much work has he gotten there this winter? Has that increased any with some of the injuries he'll have?
No, I think starting with Team USA, it was kind of more of a, hey, this is an athletic guy. He's pitched a lot in the past, and it's not like riding a bicycle, but it is something that you do every day. You play catch. You just don't do it on the mound. So I think it's actually kind of gone in the opposite direction. He wants to dedicate himself to being the best center fielder in the country, or wants to be, and wants to be a big league outfielder, and we're on board with that as well. But there is kind of that, I don't know if you'd call it ace in the hole, but he's available to do that. He's willing to do that, and I think we've kind of taken the approach of there's actually been less work in the bullpen, but we do know he's available to do that deal, if that makes sense.
Schedule-wise, you guys go to Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Florida. Is that an exciting challenge? How do you view that schedule and the gauntlet you get this season?
I wasn't viewing it till you brought it up. You're looking way down the road. I'm still reflecting on that nice win we had last night in basketball, and then we got practice today. So when that stuff comes, it'll be a challenge. It doesn't matter where you go in our league. The facilities are great. The fans are rowdy. And then the opponent is going to be similar to you on paper. They might have a little less. They might have a little more. They might have a lot more in this league. But it's going to be a grind. So our job right now is to prepare for that grind in our training as best as possible. And by no means is our non-conference schedule, starting with Georgia Southern, practice for the SEC. Those games count just as much, especially when you're talking about wanting to play in the postseason in front of your home fans again at some point. But it's an interesting schedule. You could argue, you change one or two venues on that schedule, and we have the most difficult places to play in the SEC. Again, on paper, it can change every year. I think it changed in Knoxville last year. So, looking forward to that time when it comes, and it'll be a steep challenge. But for now, we got other ones in front of us.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you all.